Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday. It's about 5:07 on Wednesday, March the 30th. We have decided to cancel services tonight because of the dangerous weather that is upon us. And I wanted to try to go ahead and get this live stream done early because of the threat, obviously, loss of power, loss of internet, etc. So I hope to get this finished up, saved to my Facebook page as well as to my YouTube page. And hopefully this will be helpful, because I know a lot of people in our area are not meeting tonight. You have to excuse me if it looks like I'm not looking at the camera. I'm set up in the office. I didn't set up the Mevo. I'm running live off of my iPhone, and probably not a good idea. And so the camera's over here, and I'm having to look here and everything. So just bear with me. And we'll study God's Word together tonight. We're looking at the matter of the home and the church. A friend of mine made the very first recommendation on how can the church support the home in the matter of child rearing and things of that nature. And I love the way that was phrased. That really struck me and stuck with me through the course of the day. Got a lot of other good recommendations, but I thought, this may be a lesson that would probably help more people across a broader spectrum, maybe help more congregations and whatnot. So that's the route we're going to go tonight. But I loved the way it was phrased. The church should support the home, and we'll talk a little bit about some of that as we go forward. But let me just say from the outset, I will mention this, that the church's job with regard to spiritual instruction and spirituality is to support the home and not to supplant the home. And unfortunately, that far too many church-going kids get the overwhelming majority of their religious instruction in Sunday school or Wednesday night Bible class, and get very little, if any at all, at home. And that's not God's plan for the proper rearing of children and spiritual instruction. The home is the primary source and foundation of spiritual instruction. And of course, we see some other things along these lines, especially in today's world, with regard to how the schools, and I'm not talking about Hamilton schools or our particular schools, because it's not the case here, but it is the case in many places where schools are striving to supplant the home and even hide from parents instruction given to their children that they know those parents would not agree with. And it's just it's really a sickening idea, and yet so many parents face that. And I thank God that we do not have to face it here where we live. I'm thankful for the influence of godly, God-fearing, Bible-believing people in our school system, from the highest level all the way down to the teachers, to the aides. I'm just grateful for that. But back to our primary topic, I preached this in a two-part series. It was actually the home, the government, and the church. And so I'll talk a little bit about the government in the introductory comments, and then move specifically to the matter of the home and the church, and how the home can help the church, and how the church can help the home. But as we think about relationships, because there's the home, there's the government, and there's the church, and the home has a relationship with the government, and the home has a relationship with the church, and the church has a relationship with another. All three of these things have a relationship with one another. And so, kind of laying a groundwork, when God created, just to kind of lay ground, when God created the world, He created three types of living things. He created men, He created animals, and He created plants. And that's just a general way to define the three types of living things that are on the earth. And man is not an animal. I know people, I know that scientifically they say that we are animals, but man is so far above the animal kingdom, as I heard one man say one time, it defies articulation. That human beings are so far above every other every other living thing, particularly those things residing in the animal kingdom, that words aren't even sufficient to describe how far above man is above the animal kingdom. And so God created three categories or three types or kinds of living things or beings: plants, animals, and man. And obviously man is the apex of God's creation. The 8th Psalm teaches us that, God gave man to be over all the things that he created. Genesis 1 teaches us the same thing. And so with these three things from the creation, man has enjoyed a symbiosis of sorts, a relationship between both the plant and the animal kingdom. But his necessary ties, man's necessary ties, are with the plant kingdom and not necessarily with the animal kingdom. And let me explain what I mean by that. When man was created in Genesis chapter 1, the Bible is clear that God created all beasts of the field, fowls of the air. All these things were created as vegetarians. And man was also created as a vegetarian, just by way of biblical proof. Genesis chapter 1 and verse number 29, God said, I have given you he's talking to Adam here. He says, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. So that's very clear. God's clear. Man was created as a vegetarian, and every animal walking the planet was a vegetarian. When God called Noah to get on the ark, here's what he said. And after telling Noah about the animals that he was going to bring to Noah to put on the ark, it says in Genesis 6:21, and you shall take for yourself all the food that is eaten. You shall gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. And so up to this point in time, which, by the way, 1,651 years from the time of the creation to the time of the flood, all right, 1/3, really about 30% of the entirety of human existence, man and every animal, every bird, everything that creeps upon the earth was a vegetarian. And Noah took those things on the ark with him so that everyone could eat. There was, aside from whatever sacrifices were made, there was no bloodshed. Animals did not eat one another. Man did not eat animals. Animals were not afraid of men. You read what God says when Noah got off of the ark with his family. He said, I'm going to put the fear of all the animals, or fear of man, in all the animals now. And so it was the case that once everyone departed the ark, that the animals and man, their relationship changed immensely. And it was only from that time forward that man was permitted, or even was given the thought to consume animals for food. And so God created man, God created all animals as vegetarians. And so what we see is that within the three living kinds, there is a necessary relationship between animals and plants, and between man and plants, a necessary relationship. Whereas there's only a utilitarian relationship between men and animals, such as you could utilize an animal for plowing purposes, a cow or an oxen, something along those lines, to use it as a tool, a utilitarian type relationship. Even today, man can live without animals. Wouldn't be near as much fun, for a guy that loves to eat. Well, obviously I love to eat chicken, and I love to eat deer, and I love to eat cows, and I love to eat pigs, and so you got all these things. It'd be for me not nearly as enjoyable, but the truth still remains that men can live as vegetarians and not eat any animals. Doesn't mean it's wrong to eat animals. I'm just saying it's possible to live without such. Now, moving into our relationship of of the institutions we're talking about tonight. There are three God-given institutions that began at creation. They are in the order in which they were created. God created the home, so the home is a God-given institution. God created civil government as an institution. Men began to reign as kings early on in the earliest days, even before the flood. And so you have the home, then you have civil government, and then you have the institution of the church. And as man was the highest of the three orders of living beings, the church, again, is far and away, in an indescribable way, so far above the other two institutions. The greatest institution God ever created is the church of Christ, the one that Jesus came and died for, shed his blood for. And so that's the greatest institution. The home is the next greatest institution, and the government is the third institution in rank order of importance. But all of them are still necessary. So there are three God-given institutions: the home, the government, or the church, and the government. And the church is the highest. Now, speaking again about relationships, the church has a relationship with the home, and the church has a relationship with the government. And like man has a necessary relationship with the plant kingdom and a utilitarian relationship with the animal kingdom, the church has a necessary relationship with the home and a utilitarian relationship with the government. For example, the church cannot properly function apart from the home. I think that's clear. When one looks at the makeup of the church and how God has intended the church to function, and we'll talk in more detail about these things. But there's a necessary relationship between the home and the church. The church cannot properly function apart from the home. But there is no necessary relationship between the government and the church. The church should exist in a hands-off relationship to the government. Doesn't mean that we don't have obligations to the government. As individuals and sometimes as congregations, we do have obligations to the government. Just a quick example. When I was in Arizona back in the early 90s, the law of the state of Arizona required every church to have articles of incorporation. And it also required, along with those articles of incorporation, to have a annual meeting of the members. And so usually on a Wednesday night at some point in the year, we would take 15 minutes after services were over. Everybody just keep their seat after the closing prayer, and we just kind of remind everybody what the law said, and that our articles of incorporation are, basically is the New Testament, and that the elders serve to the state's agreement and satisfaction. The elders serve as our board of directors, and everybody consented to that, and we all went home. In Ghana, the government required churches to put on file their creed, or their creeds, their creed books, their catechisms, etc. And when that happened, the members of the churches of Christ submitted a copy of the New Testament to the government and put it on file. And that happened. They gave the government a copy of the New Testament. Said, "This is our creed. This is what governs the churches of Christ in Ghana," and they accepted it. And so, but those are things that where the church can have an obligation to the government, and needs to fulfill those obligations, and it in no way sacrifices the autonomy of the church, the nature of the church, or how the church functions. And so, with all that said, I want to talk about two relationships that are necessary for us to think about tonight. The first is the home and its relationship to the church. And then we're going to look at the church and its relationship to the home. So I think it goes without saying that a successful home is vital to the welfare of the church. For example, without successful homes, there can be no leadership in the church. Read 1 Timothy chapter 3. If a man desires the office of a bishop, a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. He must be the husband of one wife. And so there is the necessary aspect of a successful home. But even more than that, a bishop or an elder, overseer, is to have his children in subjection, not being accused of riot or unruly. Again, success in the home with husband and wife, and now by extension with children. They are to be faithful to their father, to be obedient to their father. And so success in the home is vital to having elders in the church. Also, success in the home is vital to having deacons in the church. When you read the qualifications for deacons, and also in 1 Timothy 3, verses 8 through 12. Again, the husband of one wife. You've got to be a man, got to be a married man, not a polygamist. And then he has to have to have his children in order. And so success in the home is vital to leadership in the church. Also, success in the home is vital to true and acceptable worship. I want to just mention one thing here. In 1 Peter chapter 3 and in verse number 6, I want us to think about this particular text where it says, I said verse 6, I should have said verse 7. It says, husbands, likewise, dwell with your wives with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. And so we see success in the home is vital for a man to be able to worship God acceptably. A man with a poor attitude and relationship with his wife finds himself in a very dire situation, that he finds himself in the situation of not having his prayers heard. That's a very dangerous place to be. It's a place no man should desire, and it's a place that every man should avoid. So success in the home is vital to church leadership. Success in the home is vital to true worship. The home is vital to a good Bible teaching program. As I said before, the Bible teaching program at church is to supplement that of the home. In other words, I'll just kind of give you an example, and this kind of gives you an idea how things have changed. And I know I'm going to sound like an old man or okay boomer or whatever derogatory term people want to throw, but when I was in school, we had Sunday school books, and we took our Sunday school books home every Sunday. And in my house, between me and my sister, you did not go outside on Saturday. You didn't turn on the television. You didn't watch cartoons. You didn't go fish. You didn't go play ball. You didn't do anything on Saturday until your Sunday school lesson was done and your memory verse was ready. And that's the way it was every single Saturday. Now, I grew up in a home. My dad wasn't at home, but my mom made sure, without exception, and she checked it, our Sunday school lessons had to be completed and our memory verses had to be recited before we could go out and play. Now, what does that do for a Sunday school program? Well, it says, man, here comes, of course, let's just say there were 10 kids in my Sunday school class. Had a congregation of about 450 growing up in Dexter. There's a half a dozen or 10 kids in my Sunday school class. And what happens when they all come? When they all come and all of them have their lesson done and all of them have their memory verse memorized. Man, it just makes for a very helpful environment to continue that teaching in the classroom setting, because all the students are familiar with the lesson, all the students have the answers in their books, all the students have their memory verse memorized, ready to recite. And so, in other words, you don't have to go back and do a whole bunch of this in class. It's kind of like at school when kids come, if kids would come to school with all their homework done and all their assignments ready, Think about how much more teaching time would there be to help all the kids than having to sit around and waste time because somebody didn't do their homework or won't do their homework, or creating difficulties. And so the home is vital to a successful Bible teaching program. Without successful homes, the church cannot function on or cannot focus on its primary obligation, which is to preach the gospel to the whole world. In other words, look, we understand people have problems. Serving as a preacher now here at Burleson for 26 years, also now serving as an elder. Look, we understand homes have problems, whatever those might be. It could be job, it could be relationship, it could be health. There are things that have to be dealt with. But it bothers me when people who know better have to be begged to come to church. It bothers me when people who know better, you have to go hold their hand and pat them on the head and beg and plead to get them to do what they ought to want to do, what they know they ought to do, what they were taught as children to do. And yet we've got to just beg and plead and just do everything we can to get people to do what they already know they should be doing. Well, what does that do? That takes the focus of the eldership away from the church's primary focus, and now has to focus it on people that shouldn't have to be dealt with in that way. And so we need successful homes so that the church can focus on its primary responsibility, which is preaching the gospel to the whole world. Then also this, a properly presented home models Christianity to the world. In other words, people ought to be able to see the church in our homes. And what I mean by that is, for example, that people need to see in our homes authority and respect for authority. There is a tremendous lack of respect for authority at all levels in our world today, and authority has become a bad word. I've mentioned on Facebook and sometimes reading a great book by Brother Ralph Gilmore on pleasing God. And said that's kind of the new word for authority. In other words, rather than talking about authority, talk about pleasing God. Well, it still comes back to authority, but there's a whole generation of people who equate the word authority with authoritarian, and those two things are not the same. But in the minds of many, they are the same. And so we have to find ways of presenting Bible truths. Ways that we use for 100 years, now we have to find different ways to say the same thing. And look, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it can be helpful to us to expand our horizons and our understanding of certain things. But the Bible talks about authority. The head of the woman, the head of the woman is the man. The head of man is Christ, and the head of Christ is God. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. There's a line of authority. Husbands, be subject to your own. Wives, be subject to your own husbands as unto the Lord. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 23. The husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and He's the Savior of the body. Ephesians 5:25 and following. Children are to obey their parents and to honor their father and mother. Ephesians 6:1 and 2. And so, what do we find? We find that the home models a line or a chain of authority, responsibility. It defines or sets forth the idea of submission and obedience. And certainly, you have to excuse me, my Kindle Fire back here. Every time I'm getting all these weather notifications, this thing keeps dinging, and I forgot to turn it off. So just bear with me. Who knows how long that's going to go on? Apparently longer than I was hoping. But and then the home models Christianity in that each person in the home has a particular relationship. I can't stand this. It's getting on my nerves. Turn that thing off. It's not even a warning as far as I can tell. Some kind of advertising for some kind of game. And this thing may not quit dinging. If it doesn't, I'll just throw it in the living room. But the home models the idea that there are tasks for every individual in the home. You know, the father has a role in the home. The mother has a role in the home. Children have a role in the home. And what does that model? It models for us the church that men and women have roles to play in, not only in the home but also in the church, and that children can have a vital role not only in the home but also in the church. And I'll close with this: that many of the problems that confront the church are results of failures in the home. For example, forsaking the assembly, letting children, they travel all over the world to play sports. And they'll play on Sunday, and they'll play on Wednesday night, and parents not only permit it, they encourage it. So what does that say? What does that say when a soccer game or a baseball game or a basketball game or a softball game or whatever it is? If we allow those things to come between us and our relationship with God and His church, what does that say? The matter of divorce is a problem for the church. The Bible has a specific teaching on the matter of marriage and divorce. It can be found in Matthew. God's law for marriage is found in Matthew 19:4-6, and God's exception to that law in marriage is found in Matthew 19 and verse 9. And then again, as we've already noted, we need successful homes in order to have successful leaders in the church. And when men do not accept their God-given roles in the home, then they're not fit to lead in the church. If a man can't handle, and by the way, the Bible is clear on that. If a man does not know how to rule his own household, how can he rule in the church of God? And so the lack of male leadership in the home carries over to a lack of male leadership in the church. And look, make no mistake, the church is to be led by men. That elders are to be men, deacons are to be men, preachers are to be men, and women are not to teach or exercise authority over men. 1 Timothy 2:11 and 12. They're to keep silence in the churches. 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 34. And then lastly, the staggering amount of Bible ignorance is troublesome to the church. It hurts the church. And again, the home is where the Bible is to be studied. It's where it's to be learned, and the church is to supplement those things. So Bible ignorance is a problem of the home that carries over into the church. Now, lastly, the church and her relationship to the home. As the question was that Nathan gave, the church supports the home. Number one, it supports the home through its teaching program. But again, it supplements the teaching. It does not supplant it. The church can support the home through benevolent work. And whatever way the church needs to help those homes that are in need. The church helps the home by providing stability. In a world of chaos and flux, the church should stand firm in its doctrine and its teaching, its attitude towards sin, its attitude toward the Bible. And so it helps develop a sense of security because there is a sense of stability. And then the church helps the home by providing avenues of service in the kingdom. And then I was thinking about this today, and I'll just add this, is that the church helps the home when it treats its children as perhaps its most valuable resource. We need good Bible teaching programs. Again, the home is primary, but kids need to come to church and have good Bible teaching tools. Whatever it is that they need, be it video or audio or literature. In other words, we don't need to, in other words, we don't need to hog tie our Bible programs because of expenses. I don't know that there's any expense that's too great if it helps us to help our families and help our children. The church can help the home when it recognizes that children are important, but more than that, that they're not secondary to the work of the church. They're not secondary in the thinking of the church. Now, I'll give you an example of this where I think Burleson does a good job now. Last Sunday, we were having Sunday school, and of course, a lot of people still going for spring break, this and that. And I was talking with one of our deacons, and he teaches the junior high and high school class. And I said, how many did you have in class today? Because I knew it couldn't be many. He said, just one. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how many parents or how many teachers or whatnot think about one-on-one teaching? How important that can be. If your child's at school and they can get one-on-one attention, we think that's a great thing. But we wouldn't want to send our child to a Sunday school class that had one-on-one teaching. And I'm like, man, that's so messed up, because that student who was there Sunday morning got all of the teacher's attention. He got to interact in a very specific way, a unique way with the teacher. And so you think about, maybe in time past we might have thought, well, we've just got one. We'll just dismiss the class to the auditorium. We got a class in the auditorium, and we'll just let the teacher and the one student come out in the auditorium and sit and listen to a lesson that neither one of them has prepared, that they may not have any interest in, so to speak, so far as preparation. But to me, here's what it says: if you're the only one in class, we're still going to have class, and the teacher's going to give you everything he's got. And I would hope that young people can appreciate those types of things. For the church to provide helpful outlets for our kids. Of course, at Burleson, we send our kids to CYC in February. I think there was about 11,000 in attendance this last year. It's been as high as 14,000, but it's an incredible environment. The kids get to spend time together with one another. They get to spend time with other adults that they may not ordinarily see or spend time with. At church, they get away from their parents. They learn how to behave themselves and are encouraged in behaving themselves. And there's that positive peer pressure, plus all the teaching that goes on. There are a number of things you could. For example, you can use polishing the pulpit or CYC or Lads to Leaders. Any these great outlets that provide tools and means for young people to develop their skills and to in a very real way contribute to the work of the church. And so that's just one of a number of things that we might think about. So. But the home and the church, again, time wouldn't permit us to talk about the government, but maybe the next time we have bad weather, we'll come back and talk about the church and the home and its relationship to the government. But I appreciate you watching tonight and being a part of our Bible study. If you have any comments or questions, you can put them in this thread, or you can send me a messenger message. And just want to thank everybody for watching tonight. I know several people have been watching. I know some will watch later when 6:30 rolls around. But appreciate everybody being with us tonight. Thank you. Stay safe tonight, and God bless.